And Tennessee Republican Congressman Tim Burchett is back with us. We reestablished that connection. Congressman, thanks for hanging in there.
Yes,
you just heard Trump really bragging about tanking this border compromise bill. Let me ask you are you okay with waiting another year at a minimum for a new border security bill to make its way through the Congress?
No, but I think the reality is, Jim, that the Democrats or the Republicans really didn't stop or really weren't pushing for a terrible border package. It was our national chambers of commerce, not our local chambers of commerce, but the national. They have continuously blocked any real meaningful border control, immigration control, because honestly, they want free labor or cheap labor. They want somebody on your roof that falls off. It won't have any legal representation, won't have any way to get back at the businesses or what have you, because they're afraid they'll get deported. And I've seen this time and time again. And I'll trash the Democrats and they'll trash me and we'll do this and we'll do that. But the reality is that they don't, the big boys, the big chambers, they don't want this thing to be fixed, because if it does, then they lose their cheap labor stream. And it's shame on us. I mean, we've got 100,000 children lost in the system. This bill had a price tag of $118 billion. The one coming out of the Senate, of course, it didn't pass the Senate. $60 billion of it was for Ukrainian aid, which to me was a non-starter. But the 5,000 folks over the border before it triggered shutting the border down, or contacts, as they say, to me was a no-win. And of course, Trump came out and jumped on it, but it was already our Speaker, Mike Johnson, who, by the way, came into town yesterday for me. We had a record-breaking attendance at my fundraiser. He came out about weeks ago and had already pretty much kicked the House. So
yeah, but Congressman, if the bill that comes out of the Senate was going to do more, and it was going to do a lot more than what's being done down at the border right now, it would have given the president sweeping new powers when it comes to removing migrants who come into the country unlawfully. It would have obviously boosted security measures down at the border and so on. Wouldn't you want to take that now rather than wait and hope that perhaps something will be worked out in a year or so from now? If it's been described by you and your colleagues as a crisis, if all of this talk has been, if we've heard all of this talk about fentanyl coming across the border and so on, don't you want to get a handle on that now rather than wait?
Of course we do, but this wasn't putting a handle on it. 5,000 people, 4,999 a day could come across the border before any of the triggers were put in place. And then they said they would shut the border down. And if they could shut the border down, they would already do it. I submit to you that the powers, the uniparty, whatever you want to call it, does not want to shut the border down. They want this. And then, you have one side, our side wanting, or a group of business people wanting to keep it open for the cheap and free labor. The other side, in my opinion, some of them want it because I believe the mail-in ballot situation has got to be something that needs to be addressed. No ID.
But Congressman, you're blaming it on the Chamber of Commerce. This was on its way. You're blaming Chamber of Commerce folks. This was coming out of the Senate. It had the chance of passing the Senate. Obviously didn't get out of the Senate after Donald Trump weighed in. And had that not occurred, it's possible it would have come to the House, and who knows what would have happened after that. Isn't Trump really to blame, though? I mean, he has bragged, blame me. Isn't that fair to say? It's Trump's responsibility as to why this didn't pass, why it died.
Passed the House. Mike Johnson said it was dead on arrival. He didn't have to take it up, sort of like H.R. 2 that we passed months ago, as you well know, is sitting in the Senate waiting for the Democrat leadership to bring it up. It's been there months. We feel like that would have solved the border crisis. So it's both sides. And in this bill, though, you got to realize they didn't do it with everybody's input. It was a closed door meeting. You had the lobbyists, you had a few key senators, and to me that's no way to pass legislation. I like to get everybody at the table, and then that's the way you pass meaningful legislation. The days of down people's throats are over, and that's exactly what this was an attempt to do.
Well, there was a vote on impeaching the Homeland Security Secretary. Alejandro Mayorkas did not make its way out of the House. It failed by a small number of votes. And I'm curious what you thought of House Speaker Mike Johnson's performance on that. There was some criticism inside your party and other corners that he was not doing an effective job of counting the votes. What do you think about how he handled that?
Yeah, he has a historic one-person lead. When our former speaker decided to leave early, kind of left us in the lurch. You know, you got a 1-year wait period before you can become a lobbyist, so they want to get out as soon as they can. And so that left us in a very bad position. Speaker Johnson, we had the votes, and one Democrat showed up in a wheelchair unexpectedly. And then we had one person decide maybe that this wasn't such a good idea. I think we'll bring it back next week. Steve Scalise will be back heroically from cancer treatment. And you've already seen one of the three that decided to vote for it is announced today that they were not coming back. And then you had one, of course, flip their vote for a procedural position, just so they could bring it back up next week. So, you know, he has, in this situation, you know, somebody can get one phone call from one big hitter back home, and then they flip their vote. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's human nature.
But isn't there a bit of a contradiction if you're trying to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary for not effectively controlling the border, and yet at the same time you have this golden opportunity to pass a border compromise bill that would have enhanced security down at the border?
No, I don't think so.
Aren't those two things kind of in contradiction with one another?
I don't think so. I think Mayorkas just, the reason I said to kick him out, he under oath, he said the border's secure. There's nobody with a straight face in this country, in the media or elsewhere, could say that we have the border is secure. That's just ridiculous. And as far as
you're going to impeach him, though, for just saying that? That's why you're going to impeach him?
He lied under oath. That's what they kicked Nixon out for. You remember, they didn't convict Nixon of a crime. They kicked him out for lying under oath. And that's exactly what Mayorkas
Nixon resigned. Well, Nixon resigned before he was impeached. But I mean, but for the Homeland Security Secretary to be impeached, in your mind, for not effectively securing the border, you and your fellow colleagues in the House had an opportunity to pass something that would have enhanced security down at the border.
I just don't believe that. $60 billion of it was for Ukrainian aid, and you keep calling it a border bill. You know, the NGOs got over, let's see, I think it was $1.4 billion, and there was of the first 930 million of it, there was no conditions. These are these groups that are getting fat off of this immigration thing. That's what I keep telling you. There's so many people got their fingers in this pie. It has nothing to do with what's going on at the border. It's about making people wealthy, just like our wars seem to be. Just the industrial war complex keeps getting wealthier and wealthier, and just like our border situation, you have all charities.
But are you just going to let Vladimir Putin take Ukraine then? Is that what's going to happen? You're just going to let him take Ukraine, Vladimir Putin?
If we had a strong leader in the White House, we would have quit. We wouldn't have been funding both sides of that war through the oil contracts, which we don't have right now, which we've seen with Iran. You know, we relinquished their oil, the restraints on their oil. Everybody concentrates on the $6 billion for that of their money, whatever. I don't care about that. I mean, I care about it, but the oil money that we relinquished is put billions of dollars in that. Every single one of these wars, Jim.
But Congressman, that's a side. That's kind of in all due respect, that's a bit of a side issue. It's a very simple question. Are you okay with Vladimir Putin taking control of Ukraine?
No, of course not. He's a worthless thug. But the GDP of Russia is somewhere between.
If the Ukrainians need our help, you don't want to give it to them?
Bigger China, but you think we ought to run on Tiananmen Square? You know, it's just all this is doing is leading to more war, more missile contracts, more people on both sides getting fat off these things. I think we ought to secure our own border before we worry about somebody else's border. We told Trump he couldn't have $4 billion to secure the border, and then that.
Congressman, not to go back to the border, but you had an opportunity to get money to put more security enhancements down to the border, and you said no because Trump told you not to.
Because it didn't do anything to secure the border. It just got people fat. And it sent $60 billion to Ukraine.
If it wasn't an election year, is it possible that would have had a better chance of getting passed? Isn't it really because Donald Trump told you and your colleagues not to pass this bill that it died, that the Speaker said this was going to be dead on arrival, and that it didn't get out of the Senate. That's the truth, isn't it?
No, it's absolutely not. As a matter of fact, if you go on my Twitter account, weeks ago, I said it was dead because you let 5,000 a day over the border, Jim. All you're doing is legalizing something that's already illegal. So you put in place these people in that are here. Yeah. Now we're saying the first 5,000 are illegal, or first 4,999 are legal.
But I understand there are people coming across the border, but you had an opportunity. Senator Lankford from Oklahoma, he's no shrinking violet when it comes to being a conservative. He is a very conservative senator from the state of Oklahoma, and he said that he was threatened and that he had a conservative commentator tell him, if this passes, that's it, you're done. I mean, this was hardball tactics coming out of Trump world that killed this thing, isn't it? I don't understand why it's just impossible to say that that's what happened.
I hadn't heard Trump's opinion on it one way or the other before I came out against it, Jim. I don't, I realize that seems to be the hot button right now, but in reality, in the halls of Congress, that had nothing. And when we'd been talking about it a couple of weeks ahead of time, and everybody I'd talked to was pretty much against it. Yeah, you'll find a few that might be for it. But when they see all the details, it was $118 billion that we don't have, that we were, and $60 billion was going straight to Ukraine, and that's always a non-starter. And then the money to Gaza, which we've been told won't, that in some cases gets to Hamas. The bill had a lot of holes in it, and Senator Lankford's a good man. I talked to him shortly before our bipartisan prayer breakfast. I truly believe that, but I just think he made some wrong decisions, and he allowed, as we used to say, allowed the foxes in the hen house on this one.
All right, Congressman Tim Burchett, we'll see what happens with the next piece of legislation. Thanks very much for your time.
It's always a pleasure, Jim, and go Vols.
All right. All right. Yes, indeed. All right.